All right, I don't know if the two are connected, but when you have Amazon soaring, it's nearly doubled this year amid indications right now that it's very optimistic for a lot of consumers doing the shopping thing. It's hiring about 100,000 of them to help out with holiday sales. But when you add that to the likes of Toys R Us hiring 40,000, and Walmart about 60,000, Target 69,000, a host of others doing the same, maybe there's something going on. Maybe the consumer's going to defy economist expectations and shop. My wife needs little such incentive, but nevertheless, apparently there are going to be many, many like her, and that is why, all these stocks have been zooming. All right, another story we're following that is getting a lot of play here is what happens to Marco Rubio as a presidential candidate, because if he doesn't fare well, he can't go back on his Senate job. The Florida senator indicating his growing frustration with being a United States senator, or his critics say he's responding to the fact that he's been criticized for missing a lot of votes, but that he really doesn't want to be in the Senate. This job that he aspired to is now, well, old news. The White House is it, or that's it. To Vince Cardenas on what that might mean and how that frustration is falling out. What do you think, Vince?
Well, I think the question should be of Marco Rubio. Did you want to be a senator in the first place, or did you just want this to be a stepping stone to the presidency? Because I think people want to look at this and they say, hey, the Senate is the most august deliberative body, perhaps in the history of the world. And it's hard for, I think, a lot of people to see Marco Rubio, who's missed so many votes, and he has admittedly missed a lot of votes, and say, how would you even have the experience to assess whether or not the Senate is working?
But have other senators missed as many votes as Ted Cruz or Rand Paul, or even back in the day, John Kennedy? I mean, don't they all miss votes by the nature of running for president?
Running for president obviously does that. It did it to Barack Obama when he ran for president. But some 30% of the votes that Senator Rubio's missed came before he was ever running for president. So that was a sizable portion. So, yes, absolutely. I think people want to assess this and say, hey, you're going to leave this body that you say is not functioning because you want more power as president of the United States to fix the process? Look, the Senate is meant to slow down, the Congress entirely is meant to slow down the lawmaking process to make it deliberative so that this body doesn't foist bad laws on the American public. The system's designed intentionally to do that.
All right, I'm hardly an apologist for taking sides with Senator Rubio, but I've hardly met a senator who gets to that body, august or otherwise, who doesn't fancy moving down the block a little bit. You know what I mean?
It's true. Absolutely true.
All right. Well, thank you very much, my friend. Always good seeing you.
Nice seeing you.
All right. Well, Donald Trump, we're told, is one of those who is, sort of sizing up the White House. But he said something about our Secretary of State, which is raising some eyebrows. Now, he has said some other things that have raised eyebrows in the past and not suffered at the polls for it. But anyway, Charlie Gasparino, who's also said some impolitic things in his life on whether this is dangerous. Tell me what he said.
He called Kerry a schmuck.
Okay.
Now, based on
why is that bad?
Well, based on my knowledge of Yiddish, and I think you really need a Yiddish scholar here to explain.
But we don't have one. You're the best.
Okay, so I'm the best you got here. That's really not what he meant. I think he meant putz, and here's why. And here's why. I'm just delineate here.
Sure.
Schmuck refers to a part of the anatomy, and by the way, so does putz in Yiddish.
Sure.
But schmuck is a more detestable person, based on my understanding of Yiddish. It is a high.
But they refer to the same.
Yeah, but just think of the. But you have to think of the. There are nuances here. The schmuck is a much more pejorative, based on my understanding of Yiddish. And if you're out there and you're a Yiddish professor or you understand this stuff, please send all your emails to Neil Cavuto.
Yes.
But from what I understand, schmuck is highly detestable. Putz is more foolish. And I think,
Do people know that, though? It's become such a pejorative these days. People don't even know.
Well, here's the thing. I don't think it was right for him to call Kerry a schmuck. I mean, schmuck, he's not a schmuck. He's a Secretary of State. He's a Secretary of State. He's not a detestable, really bad guy. I mean, he may have done some foolish things. This Iran deal might be foolish, but it's not foolish. It's not he's not a detestable human being that we should be calling him names of that sort.
Well, do you think stuff like this, Charlie, we kid about it all, but that it's beginning to cost him a little bit? We have another poll out, and by the way, the overwhelming majority is in all but 2 or 3. He leads in all the polls. This is another
national
Adam
polls.
Monmouth, right? That shows right now he is trailing Ben Carson. Another one that shows that. Now that might be a temporary anomaly. This
I
is
don't
in
think so.
Iowa, right, Susanna? This is not national. This is in Iowa. All right. So he had been trailing at another poll in Iowa. Nationally, still is running away with it. He's leading in New Hampshire. What do you think?
I think Iowa is pretty interesting on Donald's sort of some of the problems that he has, his weaknesses. Iowa, you need organization. You need to spend money. Ben Carson is raised some money. He spent some money. He's got organization on the ground in the to win those caucuses in Iowa. Donald does not do that. Now, has not done that yet. He doesn't have much of an organization there. And I would say this, the real question for me, for Donald, when does he spend money? And if he doesn't spend money in New Hampshire, he could lose that. And then does he stay in the race? The real
Why
issue,
is New Hampshire a better bet for him?
well, it's Northeast, okay? It's, I think, marginally less conservative of the sort of Christian conservatives that less dominate the sort of nominating process. It's more Tea Party, and Donald seems to be resonating more with Tea Party types.
Although Carson is second to him in closing in New Hampshire.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think if you're not going to spend the money, you're not going to win there. And then the real question is, why is he in this race if he's not spending money? So I think that becomes much more of an existential question about whether he's really in to win it, other than just to make a lot of noise and see what happens. I mean,
Do you think that if he had more polls like this where he's stumbling or not the number one guy, he might be inclined to leave?
yeah, I think if he loses New Hampshire, my guess is he leaves. I would say this, though.
If he loses the primary or just polls in the state, he
No, the primary. I think the primary.
So he'd stick it out to that.
To the beginning of the year. That's the beginning. It's not too far off. And,
Right.
Neil, you got to spend money. What does he spend money on? Hats.
They're nice hats.
I have one. I love Donald. Listen, I love Donald.
I love hats, but they never fit. I have such a big head, they don't fit.
No,
So I sew two together.
No, these hats are huge.
Really?
They have big. I'm telling you, this would be perfect for you. Getting back to your last conversation.
Yes.
Every New York City councilman or councilwoman I've ever met wants to be president.
I agree. I fully agree.
You're going to hit Rubio for that,
Exactly. I agree with that. Especially that august body. I mean, they all are
wonderful.
sizing out, measuring the drapes, right?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Good to see you back in the saddle, my friend. Charlie Gasparino. Again, any Yiddish experts out there, please keep your...
Cavuto
Yes,
at
exactly.
foxnews.com.
Exactly. BillO'Reilly.com. In the meantime, on Things Political, a reminder, don't forget a Fox Business GOP debate is scheduled for Tuesday, November 10th. I'm sure Yiddish phrases will come up, so please stay tuned for that. It will be quite an interesting affair in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Meanwhile...